60 Rand, you can provide a blanket. And for 320 Rand, you can gift a winter pack, ensuring warmth against the biting cold. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
This September, experience the journey of a lifetime guided by Maulana Vanker with Worldview Travel. Walk in the footsteps of the prophets. Visit the Cave of the Seven Sleepers in Amman. Experience the beauty of Al-Aqsa, the vibrancy of Makkah, and the serenity of Masjid al-Nabawi in Medina. 16 nights inclusive of breakfast, Saudi visa, medical insurance, round-trip transfers, and city tours. Call or WhatsApp Worldview Travel on 071-835-0216 and secure your spot today. Worldview Travel. Travel the world with us.
The Breakfast Rush, brought to you courtesy of the Willow Tin Group, at the forefront of innovation, and one of the leading competitors in the South African FMCG market.
The views and opinions expressed by the guest and presenters of Radio Al Ansar are not necessarily the views and opinions of Radio Al Ansar and the Al Ansar Foundation.
A new UNICEF report reveals that South Africa is one of 20 countries that account for 65% of all children living in severe child food poverty globally. Now, child nutrition issues are compounded by easier access to cheap, nutrition poor and unhealthy ultra-processed foods, and of course, sugar-sweetened beverages that are aggressively marketed. These unhealthy foods and beverages are consumed at an alarming proportion by young children experiencing food poverty and displace more nutritious and healthier foods from their daily diets. Joining us this morning on TBR, we've got Leanne Keizer. Good morning.
Good morning, Nazmira. Hi, everyone.
Leanne, let's get straight into it. Household income has been positioned as a driver of child food poverty. What other conditions can attribute to this?
Absolutely. Look, and just to, remind everyone that it's been estimated that around the cost of an average healthy food basket to be able to feed a family of 4 for a whole month in South Africa is in the region of about 5,300 Rand as of 2024. And as you know, because of the rising unemployment rate locally, this is really unachievable by many, many South African households. And it's actually estimated that only around 1/4 of South Africa's children are receiving what we call an adequate, diverse diet, which gives them all the nutrition that they need to be able to reach their goals and potential every day. So the situation is very extreme and very concerning, and it's important to look at all the factors contributing. So, of course, poverty, you mentioned, is one of them. But 2 other elements which cannot be ignored is, first of all, accessibility and availability of these healthy foods, and also awareness of these healthy foods. So what that means is that when you're a family walking into a grocery store in South Africa, you need to be able to have the availability and access to these healthy foods, as well as the awareness to know which ones you should be choosing most often as part of your essential healthy basket for your family. So a lot of role players are involved in influencing the accessibility and availability of these foods, right? Primarily your food manufacturers. So they have a responsibility to make sure that the types of foods they are putting onto the market are the foods which generally are promoting health and support this nutrition gap that we see in South African children. And not only that then, but to improve the awareness that we mentioned, they also have a role to play in driving education and helping consumers become aware of which foods in the retail store, which foods that they are exposed to and that are available are the ones you should be choosing more often, and why, so that you understand those credentials and they become more top of mind for your healthy basket choices.
Mm-hmm. Now, children living in severe child food poverty are missing out, like you mentioned, on many nutrition-rich foods. Talk to us about these nutrition-rich foods and nutrition-poor foods. What should we be considering?
So the rule of thumb is really to consider the wholeness of the food that you're choosing.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, when you're looking for healthy foods, you're thinking of foods which are more whole, and I would like to say from the earth. So of
Right.
course, this is not the kind of world that we live in anymore. We are really pressurized. Lifestyles are hectic. We're not all able to grow our own vegetables in the back garden, although that's a
Mhm.
great option if you can. But what you're looking for when you're shopping, at least from, from your basic retailer, is foods where you can recognize at least one component of that food as being a whole food from the earth. Foods will undergo some kind of processing, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Processing sometimes renders those whole foods more convenient, more nutritious, even more available to eat. So a little amount of processing is not a problem. Where it's a problem is that you might, be inclined to be choosing foods where the original whole food is almost unrecognizable. So the food has gone through so much processing, perhaps, a packet of crisps or a biscuit, where it's
Mhm.
very difficult in that food to see where the original whole food was. And that means that through that robust, extensive processing, a lot of nutrients are obviously lost in the process. And yeah, so as a rule of thumb, you're looking for whole foods. What are they? Your basic fruits and vegetables, of course, make those the abundance of your children's meals and snacks. This is always a great go to. Um, think about your whole protein foods. So, of
Mhm.
course, things like meat, chicken, and eggs are great to be included in the diet every day. But even your plant based sources of protein, like beans and lentils, are excellent, excellent sources of protein and great nutrients. And don't forget about your dairy foods as well. So dairy foods coming naturally from the cow originally, do incorporate a lot of whole food credentials. So your basic milk, of course, yogurt, mas, inkomasi, these kinds of things. Dairy in itself is a very nutrient dense whole food. And if you choose a dairy food which has been enhanced further through fermentation, which means it has live cultures added to it, in particular your yogurt products and your mass products, that live cultures actually helps to improve your health even further because it's taking care of your gut health at the same time.
Mhm.
Over and above that, you really want to try and restrict foods which are, I would call them the treat type foods. Like I said, the foods which have been so overly processed that you don't recognize the whole food ingredients that they were derived from in the first place, because those foods tend to be really high in excess sugar and excess salt. So try and keep those types of foods to a minimum, and choose more of the whole sort of from the earth foods that we talked about.
Mhm. Now, what are the benefits that can be found in prioritizing nutrient-rich foods in your child's diet?
Remember that children are at an extremely critical age in their development. I mean, if you equate the iron requirements, for example, of a child to that of a grown man, their iron requirements are relatively for their body weight much higher because they are developing and growing at such a rapid rate. So it's important to make sure that your children are getting all the macronutrients, of course, so the energy, the protein, the carbohydrates that they need every day to be able to sustain their energy and growth, but also the micronutrients. These things are your vitamins and minerals. And in South Africa, we know that iron is a critical nutrient known to be lacking in the diet. Around 10% of South African children are lacking iron. And this is important because iron is one of the nutrients that help to stimulate brain development and growth, and therefore, literally, your child's ability to learn. Extremely critical nutrient. A second extremely critical nutrient is vitamin A and also zinc. So, around 44% of South African children are deficient in vitamin A and around 45% deficient in zinc. And both of these nutrients, although micronutrients, are known to play a critical role in immunity. And so, by making sure that you close the nutrient gap on these nutrients, you make sure that you basically protect your child's immunity in the long term. And of course, that will decrease their risk for illnesses and morbidity. And then this will also then in turn enhance their growth. So while choosing your whole foods, you'll find that more whole foods are naturally rich in these sorts of micronutrients.
Mhm.
Um, and even better, you can keep an eye out on the market for foods which are enriched with these critical nutrients. So, from Danon's perspective, we've produced two really exciting products which are designed specifically for children. The first one is called Nutri-Day Junior. It's a yogurt product and is South Africa's only yogurt which incorporates a source of iron in the yogurt. And so while, of course, kids really enjoy eating their yogurt and they think it's a delicious treat, but we're also closing that nutrient gap on iron by serving Nutri-Day Junior to children. An exciting new relaunch as well is the product called Snacks. It's a dairy snack. You can also find it in the yogurt aisle, and also has been enriched with a source of vitamin A and D, two other critical nutrients known to be lacking in the South African diet. So over and above choosing whole foods, it can be helpful to keep an eye out for enriched products, because enrichment or foods which have added vitamins and minerals are also helping to address those core critical needs.
Mhm. Lastly, balancing the scale, how can South African households, both poor and rich, ensure they include nutrient-rich foods in their children's diets, and how can this be easily achievable and, of course, affordable?
I think a lot of this message is about going back to basics when it comes to nutrition. It can be, if you really think about going back to the beginning, the message of whole foods and from the earth, and making sure that at least 80% of your plate and choices are foods which you can recognize as being that original from the earth food. This really helps. And I will often hear people say that following a healthy diet is really expensive. But, in my view, I feverishly disagree. This is really not necessarily true. It is expensive if you imagine a healthy diet to be things like supplements, blueberries, and avocados, all right? I understand that that's the affluent painting of what a healthy diet is, but absolutely not necessary. If you make sure that half your plate is made up of fruits and vegetables, they can be spinach, they can be broccoli, they can be the basics in fruits and vegetables, your average apple, banana, nachi. These things are perfect foods. And if you make sure that at least half your diet, the bulk of your diet, is made up from these basics in fruits and vegetables, it's actually a very cost effective and sustainable way of nourishing your body. Yes, sure. Then, of course, incorporate some starchy foods, because those are important for energy. So your starchy foods, primarily you'd like to choose high fiber versions of those foods, because they tend to pack more nutrients in them. So instead of choosing white bread, have brown bread. Instead of choosing, white pasta or wraps or, white rice, you could rather choose brown rice, pasta, and wraps, because those naturally have more nutrients packed into them. And then a small source of protein, at least one source of protein every day. Of course, we did mention chicken, meat, and eggs, but those could be more on the pricey side. So perhaps your plant-based sources of protein, back to your beans, lentils, soy, legumes, these are an excellent source of protein, which are notoriously extremely cost-effective. So it really becomes, if you make informed nutrition choices and substitute in more vegetables and fruits and more plant-based eating, more whole food eating, you can actually follow a healthy diet in a more sustainable, cost-effective way. I have one more example of this, which maybe will really help to bring the message home. But we've seen in stats in South Africa that the South African go-to for a kid's snack is usually a packet of crisps, right? A packet of chippies. And if you look at, your average market these days, a packet of chips is around in the region of 6 Rand, right, to buy a single serving of chips. And in that single serving, you're getting very little in nutritional value. It's a really high fat, high sodium, not great for health choice. Whereas if you compared it, for example, to a single serving of yogurt, this is now a completely different scenario. A single serving of yogurt is around 3 Rand 80 for one of those little 100-gram tubs. And in that tub, not only will you get the natural credentials of dairy, which we know to be very nutrient rich, but also if you've chosen yogurt, you'll get that added benefit of live cultures and gut health. And finally, if you choose a yogurt which has been enriched, like we talked about earlier, with added vitamins and minerals, which are known to be lacking in the South African diets, like the products that Danon has produced, this is giving you a way of making a better informed, more cost-effective choice for that single moment of snacking. And really, all it required was a bit of awareness and a bit of an intentional choice to substitute, to instead of going for the crisps in that snacking scenario for your kids, rather choose a single serving of yogurt. Not only is it more cost effective, but also more nutritious, and therefore in the long term will benefit your health.
Absolutely. Leanne talking to us about how to balance the diets of your little ones and, well, your pockets at the same time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The Breakfast Rush, brought to you courtesy of the Willow Tin Group, at the forefront of innovation, and one of the leading competitors in the